Hi everyone, I'm your host Mary Vin Rose, and you're tuning in to Around the Way with the GirlMob. In this episode, we're going to be exploring our mental health. It's a topic that we see trending all the time on social media. Speaking of social media, do you know that social media can have both positive and negative impacts? I have two specialists in the building with me to talk about how mental health is so important and how we stay positive with our social media usage. Hi ladies!
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me in the studio today. So mental health, I'm so glad we're even having the conversation. I remember at one point in time growing up, mental and health together, we couldn't say it out loud. But now we have memes about it, and now people are like, let me tell you what my therapist said to me today. I'm one of those people, but my therapist said to me today. So I wanted to know more about you ladies. Like, I know what you do, but I want our audience members at home to know a little bit more about you. So just say your name, how long you've been doing what you're doing, exactly what your job title is.
Awesome. My name is Josie Rosario. I'm a licensed relationship therapist, and outside of that, I spend my time speaking and consulting with organizations around workplace wellness and culture. I am going into my third year as a therapist, but have been doing social justice work for over 10.
I'm Tiffany Stokes-Dinkins. I'm also a licensed therapist. I've been in the field since 2003 as a practicing therapist since 2009. I am also a yoga instructor, and I have my own private practice as well.
Ooh, yoga, yes. I haven't done yoga in a minute. That's probably why I'm feeling a little
tense,
right? So I know earlier I mentioned how proud I am that we're even having this conversation. And I also mentioned social media briefly. Something that I've noticed is a lot of people are using terms like, oh, I'm so depressed. Mm-hmm. So I know that's something that's becoming common, but there are people who are actually suffering with severe depression. How do you know exactly that you're depressed versus if you're just experiencing, temporary sadness?
I think that the fact that folks are using those terms, right, it can be such a double-edged sword, kind of like what you're saying, where sometimes, when we're using it so much and don't really know the context or can't really understand what it is that we're saying, it can kind of be watered down, or we can kind of become desensitized to it. But I think, it's, to your point, it's perfectly fine to experience, anxiety, for example. It's a completely normal emotion. We all experience anxiety. We can feel sadness or have bouts of depression. I think that the point at which folks need to maybe start thinking about seeking the support of a professional is if it gets in the way of daily functioning, right? So, it's okay if you want to, Netflix and chill for like a Sunday or a day, or, need to take a mental health day. But if it's something that's continuous or, is really kind of getting in the way of you, living your life, then that's when, I would say it would be good to seek support.
And Tiffany?
Especially to your point, I've always considered depression to be something like a heavy blanket. It's very comfortable, it's very warm, you want to stay up under it. And if you're under it for that one rainy day, that's perfectly normal, it's a normal emotion. When you know that it's a significant problem is when that blanket gets heavy and you can't take the blanket off. So when I'm talking to patients, a lot of times I tell them it's that feeling of just complete loss of interest, complete inability to eat or sleep, complete ability to even concentrate, is when you know for sure, like, yeah, I'm actually clinically depressed versus I'm just sad about something in the moment.
And another term I know people use a lot is like, oh, you're so OCD. Like, explain it to me. What exactly is OCD?
Yeah. So OCD is a disorder, right? And again, I think that, being like type A is one thing. Like, I'm a recovering type A person.
So what does that look like, recovering type A?
It's like I used to be a really big planner, right? Where it's like things have to be a certain way. And that really, comes from like anxiety and fear and all this other stuff. And, I'm a therapist, but I also have my therapist. I've been in therapy for about 10 years now. And so, it was through that work that I can relax a little bit, and I'm still, about my business and, very much a planner, but I think I can relax a little bit. So I think, when folks say, I'm so OCD, that's what I automatically think about is, you need things to be a certain way, there's this like level of rigidity and flexibility, and I think that's one thing. Whereas I think OCD again really does interfere with your relationships, interferes with your daily living, right? Which is something that we say a lot in the field.
And there really is nothing wrong with being organized. There's nothing wrong with being a planner. And sometimes when you hear socially, oh, I'm so OCD, it's almost as if it's a bad thing to be organized and to plan and to have things in order. But it's definitely a term that's overused. People who truly suffer with obsessive compulsive disorder or obsessive compulsive personality disorder, and there are two different things. They're the type where I have to wash my hands 54 times because if I don't, my hands are still dirty. It's like I have to take my coat on and off 2,000 times because if I don't, it's not on properly. It's the extreme of things. Every single person, which is why I always love to normalize mental health, we all fit in the DSM. It is designed to be built on the personalities of others. It's based on human nature. So when it becomes a disorder or dis-ease, as I like to use, it's when it's the extreme. It's when it's really about, I can't work, I can't talk to people, I can't be around other people, I can't do certain things because of this.
That's so interesting. Dis-ease.
Dis-ease.
So no longer having ease in something.
Absolutely.
Wow, I really like that. I never thought of it that way because I've always struggled. I never wanted to say mental issue or mental illness or disease because it makes it feel like there's something totally abnormal with somebody, right?
Absolutely.
I actually studied ASL in college, so American Sign Language, and I had to partake in like deaf communities, right, or like hard of hearing communities. And I remembered, I was like, oh, it's so empowering to work with people with disabilities. They were like, excuse me. Like they would sign very like aggressively at me, like, excuse me, we do not have, a disability. We're just differently abled. We're able to do everything you can do. It's just different and it looks different for us. So I think also, again, like, thank you for that. I think that really adds something to the conversation I've never heard before. So being in media, right? I love media. I love film. I love TV. Netflix and chill is like my favorite thing in the whole entire world. So because I'm such a movie buff and because I'm getting more into my wellness and my, mental health, I'm starting to notice a little pattern. Not to call out Hollywood, my peoples, I love Hollywood, but I'm starting to see this trend where like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder is starting to become this trend of like the psycho killer. And like they're not really doing, I feel like they're not really doing justice to why these people, because I've never met a person with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia that's actually mean or quote crazy. They're like everybody else, just with these different set of challenges, right? So my first question is, what exactly is bipolar disorder? Because I think that's the number one thing that people are constantly diagnosed with, and I want to make sure that we're like demystifying and getting rid of some of the maybe negative stereotypes around it.
Yep. So there are two kinds of bipolar disorder. One that is more, presents more with depression, and another one, and I think this is where probably what you're talking about, especially when, we think about like Hollywood, and it's one that presents as, or rather with mania. And so, just like the name suggests, it is kind of this differences in how people present. And so I think, and I mean, we can go deeper into it, and please add if you want. I think that what you were sharing about, Hollywood and the trends, right? Hollywood loves to sensationalize things, right? So to me, it's not at all uncommon that, that those are the two disorders, right, that would be mostly highlighted because, those are the ones, that we may perceive, and we as in folks that may not be in the field, and may not be familiar with it, may feel or may experience it as something intense. And so it's not at all surprising that movies would make, would choose those two. A few months ago, I saw Modern Love, I think it is on Amazon Prime maybe, and one of the episodes features a woman who has bipolar disorder, and I think it did a really great job at showing a different take of the disorder, and it was really well done, I think.
What made it different?
I just think there was just like a very human element to it, you know, because again, I think to your point, right, we think about the psycho killer, right? You have like schizophrenia, for example. And so, you know, this is a regular person, you know, and again, like regular people have these disorders, you know? And so I think what really sticks out in my mind was at the end, she's having this conversation with her friend who gets really curious about what her life is like, and really puts herself out there and like says something to the effect of like, you know, I'm your friend and I want to learn more about this so that I can really be there for you.
Oh, wow.
You know, and so again, I just think it's really it departs from what you typically see, and I think it really normalizes it, because to your point, you just never know what folks what folks are dealing with. I mean, you don't know till you know.
Right.
You know.
Do you think media has like some type of responsibility to these?
Oh, absolutely. Especially I think society as a whole, and this is only my personal opinion, has a responsibility when it comes to bipolar disorder, because it's such an overgeneralized diagnosis. And it's only overgeneralized because it's easy to bill for as far as insurance, and it's easy to prescribe by psychiatry. Because we're talking about oscillating from really, really manic, like I'm maxing out all of my credit cards, to really, really depressed where I can't leave my house and I don't want to do anything but sit in a corner and cry. And that's really what bipolar is. It's not just my mood changed because the weather changed. And I think that Hollywood and society really should take a little bit more accountability for how it's portrayed, because it's not reality. And it perpetuates a stigma. It perpetuates someone not wanting to say that I have this mental dis-ease. It's, you know, no, I'm normal, I'm okay. Or no, I don't want to take medication because I'm fine, I can control this. And it's not true. But why would I want to say that there's something quote unquote dis-eased with me if Hollywood will say, well, this is what bipolar looks like?
I want to backtrack on the bipolar part just a little bit and explore that a little bit more in terms of like, so do you think people are being misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder? In fact, they're not bipolar?
Absolutely.
Happens all the time.
Happens all the time. I happen to work for a hospital for my main job, and I literally have patients come in and they're actual, and I don't want to say actual as if there's a right or wrong diagnosis, because it's actually very, very subjective. But they would have major depressive disorder with anxious distress, and that's their diagnosis upon presentation. But what the diagnosis they came with from a previous provider would say bipolar schizophrenia or bipolar depression or something in the relation of bipolar. And then they would have this complete list of prescriptions that they've been taking for, let's say, the past 15 years of things that counteract each other. And the entire time they're saying, well, I'm still anxious, I'm still depressed, my mood's still changing, I still can't do these things, but I'm on 7 different medications and I've been bipolar all my life. Well, that's because you've been mistreated and someone else was making money and maximizing, similar to Hollywood, on someone's diagnosis. And it's a very sad systemic issue.
And I think to add to that, I mean, there's like the capitalist piece of this, right? I mean, it's medicine, right?
Absolutely.
And no matter how you slice it, you know, someone has to get paid, right? Someone has to, you know, make a profit somehow. And I think when you think, especially with communities of color in the DSM, as Tiffany mentioned, is kind of like a book, right? Like it's a Bible almost around disorders. And I forget exactly what DSM's what it represents or what it stands for, but you know, it's great because it kind of standardizes, you know, the language that we use as professionals when it comes to disorders and illnesses, and also, you know, there are holes, right? If you think about communities of color, right? Like, how do you incorporate trauma, for example, if you're, the racial trauma, how do you incorporate that? And, if someone comes to you, or comes to me, for example, and they're experiencing racial trauma, and their symptoms are a function of that, then, how do you take that with what the DSM says and put it together to treat this person?
So, continuing on the conversation of bipolar disorder and depression, I know that I am a super fan of WebMD. Like, it doesn't have to be for mental health. It could be for any little thing. I have a cough, my knee starts hurting, my back starts hurting. So what do I do if I'm having these symptoms and I just want to make sure that my viewers at home are not like me, going on WebMD, thinking that they're doctors, but they're not. So what do we do? Like, what is the right way to go about these things?
So there's nothing wrong with educating yourself. That's what the internet is for. It's when you're looking at WebMD and your knee hurts and now you have cancer. Like, that's when it becomes an issue. But anytime you have real symptoms, like you're losing your appetite, or you're overeating, or you have this constant worry, or you're just feeling abnormal to some degree for you, definitely go see your healthcare provider, see your primary doctor. You can always go there first. And then from there, they can either make the referral for you for mental health services, so you don't have to feel that immediate stigma of seeing somebody. You can go to a person that you trust, that's a medical provider.
I agree.
So the next topic, the topic that I've been waiting for, because both of you know me now on a personal level, I have such a love-hate relationship with social media. Because prior to doing TV, I was able to just disconnect. If I'm like feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, I'm just like, ugh, I could just plug off. But now I can't really do that. And I'm gonna have a moment of vulnerability. Is this a circle of trust?
Yes.
Of course.
Is it a circle of trust? Okay. Because I'm at an age where I am starting to see a lot of people get married, have kids, and I really thought at this point in time in my life I would have that too. And I can't help but go down that spiral of comparing myself. And I get it. Social media is a tool. It's how you use it. But there have been times where it has affected me really negatively. How can someone like me at home make sure that we're using this tool in a positive and productive way?
Yeah, I think that is very common. And
So I'm not alone?
No. Girl, you are not,
Not
alone.
alone.
I mean, I do it too, right? I do this thing where, I compare, or, I use social media for my business, for my private practice, and just building my brand. And so, it is very common for me to, see other therapists, for example, that have like more followers, or, they're doing all these other things. And I'm just like, you want to compare. And I think, to your point, it's really about how you use it, and I'm very clear with how I'm using this platform, and I think that's just a good practice for everyone. If you find yourself kind of going down that spiral where you're feeling really bad about yourself, or about kind of where you are in your life, there's nothing wrong with like doing a social media audit. I'm a big fan of them.
Ooh,
right? And that's literally just like going through the accounts that you follow and, unfollowing them.
But I don't want to unfollow the people with the babies.
I mean, you can temporarily unfollow them if you want. The point is that you have choice here, right? I love the shade room, and also it like really spikes up my anxiety,
That's
right?
true.
Especially because of all the content that's on there. So I just had to unfollow it. I just have my friends tell me what's on the shade room, and so, but that works for me. I'm also very clear about when I use social media, and so like I have a rule: I do not use social media within 2 hours of when I wake up. Right, and that really helps me ground myself for the day. It allows me to like really stick to my morning routine that includes eating breakfast. I'm really bad at that. And so I think it's really about being honest with yourself about what this platform is going to do for you, and it's not just if it's business related, even if it's just personally, and what you need to do to honor yourself and where you are, for sure.
Social media definitely needs to be regimented. I think you and I, Mary, have mentioned before, I'm from a generation where cell phones were half the size of this table and they were connected in your car with a cord, and you had to make sure that your car battery was working so that cell phone turned on, okay? Because that was a cell phone. Now you have a computer in your pocket. So for me, social media is not as important in the sense of being social like it is for generations after me. So I definitely see it as a platform for business, for networking, for international networking. There's a lot of benefit to social media. At the same time, I could block all of my friends with the babies, right? But I'm still gonna have that sponsored feed of Kim Kardashian and her new plastic surgery. And that's gonna make me feel some kind of way, because my body doesn't look like hers. So it's, how does Tiffany now not feel so horrible that she doesn't look like Kim Kardashian? My thing is to have time frames, to really have limits. So if I know I have to be on social media on Tuesday from 12 to 4 is as much as I'm going to do for my brand. I'm not going to get on it after 4. I'm going to spend time with my friends. I'm going to speak to mom or dad. I'm going to be with loved ones. I'm going to do other things outside of social media so that I stay balanced. Otherwise, you're going to get caught into that rabbit hole of looking at, again, the Kardashians, or looking at somebody's car.
I do like looking at their babies.
You see what I'm saying?
I don't know
There's
anything
some
else
pretty
about them.
babies.
They are
But
beautiful.
can we really sit there and do that all day and then now feel bad because our one child doesn't look like, Saint or West?
I think my
I'm
kids
just
might
saying.
be, not to say they might be cuter, but I'm just saying they're really cute.
Well, I don't follow those feeds. I don't know. I mean, yeah,
So
no.
it's part of the regimen to make sure.
Yeah, it's just, again, like, yeah, I have to very much curate. I think it's my responsibility on how I use social media. And for me, I have to curate the information that's coming to me, because we are inundated with information now. Everything is literally at our fingertips. So yes, it was a very conscious decision to not follow Kim. Well, whatever, I'm not gonna get into my opinions of her, but the point is, I understand that it may, why certain people may follow certain accounts. Yeah. And again, I just think it's an honest conversation with yourself.
So it's about honesty,
and
transparency with yourself. So one thing you've done a really good job of, I don't know if you noticed, but you have helped me with social media. So thank you. So if someone out there wanted some tips and tools, because I know one of the things you do besides obviously being a licensed therapist is that you help other women of color, especially who are also in the therapy space, advance their business online. I know there's probably people out there who are interested in that. How do you go about that?
Yeah, so I run a marketing consultancy called The Healing Strategy, and I support therapists who are in private practice and help them connect with clients. And so, if folks are interested in that, all they have to do is reach out via social media or an email. I currently have an online course, and the reason, sorry, just to backtrack a little bit, I have an online course that I offer for therapists that really teaches them the foundational marketing skills. And I have a couple other offerings, but that's my signature offering. And the reason why I started that was because I went into grad school knowing that I wanted to have a private practice, right? It's a business, and soon realized that you don't just need clinical skills, you also need business skills, and we aren't taught that. So I went to Columbia for my grad program, and so I leveraged the resources of a big university and took classes at the business school, had a coach, joined a marketing mastermind, and kind of put everything to my own brand, and now I teach other therapists how to do that.
So I just want to recap for our audience. So step 1, to use social media in a positive way and to make sure you have good mental and I guess emotional practices with it. Step 1 is to create some type of regimen, like to be saying I'm only going to be from this hour to this hour. I guess the second thing is to I guess the first thing really is to have the open conversation with yourself, like what it is, like who I am, and knowing if you have a mental dis-ease, then how to go move forward with that. Tailoring your who you follow and maybe even who's following you, making sure that you're not having any hate or negative energy coming into your space. Am I missing anything?
Well, I think one important thing that I tell everyone, and I'm victim, sometimes I don't listen to my own advice, is that we're all running our own race. And we have to really define what success means.
Right.
Like today, for me, this is a success, being able to sit here and talk to you. And for somebody else, it may look like nothing, but this is my race. So if we're able to be honest with ourselves and say, hey, you know, I did this, this, and this, and I'm better than where I was maybe 6 months ago, then that is just as successful as somebody else who might have a PhD and run the country.
So one of my last questions, ladies, because this conversation has been so enlightening, this is definitely going to be really helpful for me. 47 million Americans are struggling with mental health, and that is according to the National Alliance on Mental Health. That means there's a lot of people out here in relationships with someone who may be facing a mental health issue, right? So how do they go about making sure that they are being there for their partner, being supportive of their partner, maybe not even a partner, maybe a family member, but still holding safe space for themselves and making sure they're pouring into themselves when dealing with something like this?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. I think when it comes to supporting someone that's going through any type of mental health challenges, I think it's really important to just build awareness around what it is, how it shows up, and you could do that yourself, or depending on where the person is that you're supporting, you can be in conversation with them. I think curiosity goes a really long way, and I also think that making sure that you have boundaries, right? And I know that boundaries, everyone's talking about boundaries and they're great. And sometimes folks think that boundaries are like these like really restrictive things. But I think that if the person you're supporting, for example, if there are multiple people that are supporting that person, they have a support system, then thinking about what are your boundaries. So to make sure that you're refilling your own cup before you're, providing support for someone else.
I actually went to a service, and the pastor was saying you cannot pour from a half filled cup. Like we think that because we have a little liquid in our cup, we can give.
Right.
Your cup actually has to be runneth over.
Yeah,
so if you're not runneth over, then you shall not be pouring stuff that you do not technically have. Because I'm someone who's like that. I will service my community, service the world, and then look at everyone like, can't you see I'm exhausted? And they're like, no, you didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the boundary part comes in. So anything else to add to that,
to speak to boundary, if you and I or any of us get that phone call, right, and it's 2:00 in the morning, like the first and second phone call, you don't want to be the bad friend, the bad daughter, the bad whatever, and not answer. So sometimes we take boundary to the extreme. Like, I'm not answering the phone between this time because I need to sleep. But once we get to that third and fourth phone call and you're really feeling that emotional drain, I don't think there's anything wrong if you're coming from a place of love and you're assisting them in getting the help that they need. I would like to say that I've worked hard in being that kind of friend where I have no problem taking that phone call, but why don't you come with me over to this organization? I'll go with you to your doctor's appointment. Let's get that referral. Here's this pamphlet of someplace that I know of. I happen to be connected to these therapists. Are you interested? And giving them the education and saying, because I love you, because I care about you, I want you to be okay. And I don't think I have all of it to make you okay.
Has there ever been a time where you may have had a friend that was like pulling on you a little too hard and you had to have that conversation?
Yeah.
And if so, what did that look like?
It was horrible. It was scary, especially when and I'm using a real example, having that 2 a.m. suicide call.
Wow.
And they're like, I have the knife at my wrist, I'm going to take my life. Do I now say, well, I'm sleeping, I'm going to hang up? No, I care about you. So you talk them off the ledge, you talk them and give them a reason to not want to take their lives, but then what do you do next?
Yes.
Because you can't keep taking that phone call, right? That's stressful. Now you need your own mental health therapist, right?
Right.
That's where, hey, let's go have coffee. Let's talk. Now that everything is settled, now everything is calm, you're no longer stressed, we're not in that place, let's have a real conversation. And always coming from a place of love, not from criticism, not from judgment, not from there's something wrong with you. It's, I just want to make sure you're okay. And I don't know what else to do but this, but I definitely have resources that can help you.
I was thinking, I was also thinking about, you know, how do you set, like, this, I was thinking about those boundaries, and about, you know, if your friend is struggling with something like anxiety and depression, for example, you know, how do you keep those boundaries, you know? And I think compassion fatigue is real, and that's when you literally start to feel resentment, you know, because you're giving so much and you're being there so much and you're kind of putting others so much before yourself. And I think that's always a kind of a good threshold or barometer when it comes to just checking in with yourself and your own boundaries, especially if you're supporting a friend with a mental disorder, disease, illness, or just supporting a friend. I think either
Or a
way.
loved one, or your spouse,
Yeah.
or it doesn't just have to be a friend. It could be a
Anyone in
parent.
your
It could be
circle.
anybody.
Yeah. So, ladies, thank you so much for joining me in the studio today. This conversation was just so needed. I feel uplifted. I feel empowered. I feel like I can use social media in a positive way. I think we debunked some like negative stereotypes about some common, you know, things that are happening in our lives around our mental health. And if people want to know more about you and find out what you do in another level, where can they go?
Yeah, I'm very active on social media. And my handle is Josie Rosario NYC, and my website is josierosario.com, and I'm very active on both. So just, yeah, send me an email.
So you can go on Instagram. Yes, I have an Instagram account. And it's BeWellWithTiffany_.
Thank you, ladies, again. I'm your host, Mary Vin Rose, and this was a special episode of Around the Way with the Girl Mob. Make sure you're keeping in touch, following us on Twitter, on Instagram, and check out our blog at thegirlmob.com. Bye, y'all. See you on the next one.